Okay, we start off the course then with a brief discussion of exploration and a deeper and more detailed explanation of the reasons for and patterns of colonization. Some things to keep in mind as we watch the presentations, or you watch the presentations. You should keep your study guides handy. This will keep the vocab that you need to know up in front, and also the key concepts of the questions that you're trying to answer in your mind as you watch the presentations. Hopefully help you fill them out as we go along. All right. Before we get started into the content, the SOLs give us some big ideas to keep in mind as we discuss the material ahead. Two of these, for this unit anyway, are early European exploration and colonization resulted in the redistribution of the world's population. As millions of people from Europe and Africa voluntarily and involuntarily moved into the world. Redistribution means people have changed the place they live. Okay? Involuntary are the slaves from Africa that are picked up and forced to the New World against their will. Voluntarily, of course, are all the immigrants that flood to the New World from Europe for new opportunities. Right? The second big one is exploration and colonization initiated worldwide commercial expansion. Commerce is trade, so the expansion of trade in the world is a result of colonization. All right, as agricultural products were exchanged between the Americas and Europe, this, of course, is the Columbian Exchange, which we'll talk about a little more. In time, colonization led to the ideas of representative government and religious toleration that over several centuries would inspire similar transformations all over the world. Okay, so as we're going through the presentation, some questions to keep in mind. Why did Europeans settle in the English colonies? All right. And there's different reasons depending on the regions that they were settled in, right? We're going to talk about three different colonial regions in the New World. We have the southern colonies, the middle colonies, and the New England region. And there's different reasons why they settled in each one. Okay? Question number two is, how did their motivations influence their settlement patterns and colonial structures? All right? Society. Okay? And number three is, in what ways did the cultures of Europe, Africa, and the Americas interact? And what were the consequences of those interactions? All right? So we have three big questions, two big ideas as we go through the presentation. All right, so here, exploration and colonization. All right, Columbus set sail in 1492, said Columbus sails the ocean blue in 1492. He discovers America. We're going to stick to that. That's the acceptance. We say, if I ask who discovered America, it's Columbus in 1492. There are a number of problems with this. First, millions of people lived here when Columbus got here. And they would argue the fact that maybe he did not discover anything since they were already here. And they've been here for thousands of years. The accepted ideas, Native Americans crossed the land bridge from Asia, across the Bering Sea, 15,000 years ago. Okay, so if I ask you, how did Native Americans get here, Indians get to the New World, it's across the land bridge. All right, so millions of people have been here for thousands of years before Columbus. They're here when he gets here, so he might not have discovered much. Second, not only the Native Americans, but the Vikings had been here before Columbus, all right, up north in Canada. All right, so the Vikings had settled before, or attempted to settle America for Columbus. Of course, there was a big difference, in technology. So Columbus was much more successful. Europeans at Columbus's time were more successful than the Vikings. Okay. Anyhow, the discovery by Columbus leads to the redistribution of the world's people. As Spain and Portugal are getting very rich from these new discoveries, and that discovery is going to lead other nations in Europe to follow suit. All right. Now, some big things to keep in mind when thinking about exploration and colonization. Explorers do not come for permanence. Right? They go for 3 Gs. All right. And it's different. Colonizers are coming to stay. Explorers are not. So the 3 Gs that motivate exploration and explorers are gold, God, and glory. All right. Gold, God, and glory. So keep those in mind. All right. Very different from colonists who plan on staying colonists. They're going to bring their families. They're going to be here forever. Okay. The Columbian Exchange we just mentioned. You should look this chart over. You should know a couple things that go back and forth. This is the term Columbian Exchange that we give to the exchange of goods and ideas between the old world, which is Europe, old world Europe, and the new world, which is the Americas, both north and south. All right? The movement of goods and ideas between the two. Things like sugar, pigs, horses, guns, and the wheel come from Europe to America. And things like corn, tobacco, tomatoes, and potatoes go from the Americas to Europe. So no pizza sauce before Columbus, right? No potato in the Irish diet before Columbus. All right. All right. Now, diseases go both ways, and one of the biggest tragedies, the biggest tragedy of the discovery of the New World is going to be the deaths of millions and millions of Native Americans due to European diseases. And we'll talk about this in class, why Europeans don't die from the diseases that they bring over, or at least not the numbers that Native Americans do. All right, so we have things like the smallpox coming from Europe, kills millions of Native Americans. Of course, diseases go both ways. The one you should recall going from the Americas to Europe is syphilis, which we'll talk about more in class too. Okay. Now, a quick look at why people would move to the New World before we break things down to the two